Olá, boa noite. Hey, hey, hey. How y'all doing? Feliz quinta-feira. Tudo bem? Eu sou Christian Wright. Meu nome é Christian Wright. I am the founder of Blacks at Global and the host of the Blacks at Global podcast. I am joining you from my home in Lisbon, Portugal. Still working on my Portuguese, y'all. So hope you all are doing well. Bailey's taking her little walkabout. So yeah, it's Thursday. I'm excited. Lots to talk about before I bring on tonight's guest, which I'm excited about. Also, because if you are a fan and are following the Blacks at Global podcast, you might have noticed that this week's episode of the podcast, that's the same person as tonight's guest. So, baby, we're going to chat it up. So yeah, it's a lot to talk about. I sent out an email about tonight's guest yesterday, but then I also sent out an email, if you're on our email list, today. Why? So for those of you who are YouTube channel members, you already know this. If you are a member of Blacks at Global Passport, you already know this. So Blacks at Global is turning 5, y'all. 5 years it is. 5. I'm delighted. And so in true Krishan fashion, we got to celebrate. Hey, hey, hey. So October 23rd, we are chartering a yacht. Yes, a yacht. Yacht. And we are sailing on the River Tejo in Lisbon, Portugal. Same birthday yacht as I had last year. So there's going to be libations, wine tasting, light bites, right? A lot of dancing, a lot of celebration of Black joy, celebration of being free, right? So wherever you are in your move abroad continuum, maybe you haven't had that awakening or desire to leave yet. Maybe you're in the process. Maybe you already have left. Maybe you've already been a guest on the podcast. Come on through. Tickets are on sale now. I'm going to drop some links because you know me. I got some links. So a couple links. So first and foremost, the link to our events page on blacksatglobal.com. I hope you guys are going to the website. We have a website. It's been up. Yeah, and just for that, because people be like, oh, this might be their first time realizing that Blacks at Global has a website. So let's see if I can do this. Yeah, that's the website, right? And you see Rory's name. Rory is our guest for tonight. And then on the 24th, there's so much in my head right now. On the 24th, we are welcoming our sisters in freedom of Exodus Summit, Stephanie Perry and Rashida Dow, are coming to Lisboa, and we are going to enjoy sisterhood, enjoy freedom at a Black-owned restaurant in Lisbon. So we are having 2 events. The 23rd, our anniversary yacht party. The 24th, Exodus Summit meetup. It is co-ed. So for the fellas who have been feeling like they've been left out, baby, it's a Blacks at Global event. So y'all invited. Tickets are on sale. So the thing about the tickets that you should know. So for the yacht, the tickets will increase on Monday. If you are straddling the fence, and the tickets are non-refundable because yachts are expensive. So you're pretty positive that you're coming, get your ticket now. Monday, that price will change. For the Exodus Summit meetup, we are, I'd say, nearing half-ish capacity. Those tickets are selling fast. So again, if you want to come and celebrate freedom, liberation, just disconnect from the shenanigans that's going on in the States, come on through. I'd love to have you, right? So, do that. Okay, So I see a lot of y'all in the chat. I want to say hello before we bring on our wonderful guest for tonight. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I need to tell you? Oh, yes, one more thing. Uh, Also, the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. I am speaking at the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women. May 16th through the 18th is the summit. Definitely get your ticket if you haven't already done so. It is a wonderful summit. This is the second year. It's an opportunity for you to get the tools and resources you need to get out of that toxic job that does not deserve you. And like I said, I've had, unfortunately, my fair share and then some. So we want y'all to get free. And we're going to be talking about these jobs tonight. Okay. Now, let me go and say hi to y'all in the comments and say, hey, hey, hey. Let's see if my scroll comes back. My scroll be hiding. All right. So I saw, there it is, one of our channel members, Maureen. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, I know he is a rock star. Thank you for that. And Greta's in the comments. Hey, 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 Greta. First in the chat. Hey, travel is my passion. Boa noite. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, K Renee. Hey, the Howards. How y'all doing? Hey, Action BJ. Miss Melanie. Hey, Marcus. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Tanya's in the house, and Cheryl, Jametta. Hey, hey, hey. Jametta got her ticket. VJ got his ticket. Greta's here. Hey, Greta. Harlem Minded. Hey, hey, hey. Look, he said loud and proud. He's like, I got my tickets to both events. Okay. Because Exodus Summit does not let men in that group. Okay. So come through, y'all. Come through. It's going to be a time. I'll also say one more thing. Y'all know me, right? I am a little bit extra when I come to these events, when I come to putting on events. So I may or may not be doing a special thing after that, but it's still in the works. Once it's more mature, I'll share. But just know you might want to book several days here in Lisbon. Alexa's in the house. Hey, hey, hey. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, Susan. Hey, Jess. Hey, Pinky. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Look, come through, come through. All right. So without further ado. So like I said, this episode of the Blacks to Global podcast, the most recent episode, features my next guest tonight. So we are going to be talking about all the things that have been happening in the U.S. in the job market. So I'm going to bring up to the stage Rory Verrett, who is an executive recruiter, who's also the founder of Protégé Leadership Academy. So, hey, 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 Rory, long time no see.
I just saw you earlier this week, and I'm so happy to be back on my favorite podcast. It's kind of surreal because you woo me to sleep sometimes. I put that in. Aren't you happy to not be worried about Kens and Karens? So happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to quote the New York Times, because they said that I have a sultry and seductive voice. I'm like, oh, all right now.
It is. I'm a married man for 20 years, so I'm gonna keep it platonic.
Happily.
It is soothing. It is soothing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Because as a podcaster, right? You don't like the sound of your own voice, and so when someone compliments, you're like, my voice.
Oh, it's really
good. Thank you. So enough about me. Let's talk about you. For those of the viewers that are watching who haven't yet listened to the most recent episode, introduce yourself.
I'm Rory Verrett. I am the managing partner of a company called Protégé Ventures, and we have two arms. We have Protégé Search, which is an executive recruiting company. We work on behalf of companies like Patagonia, the New York Times, Freddie Mac, the U.S. House of Representatives, PayPal, Pinterest, and other companies looking to recruit talent. We promise a bespoke and proprietary inclusionary recruiting process. And we've been doing this for 9 years. I came out of the two of the big search firms are global search firms, Spencer Stewart and Russell Reynolds. And I was the former head of talent management at the National Football League. I was the NFL's headhunter for a few years, and they brought me in-house to do their headhunting and leadership development. The other part of our business is executive coaching, which is done through the Protégé Leadership Academy. I too have a YouTube channel, and I have an offering right now that is helping people in their transition. I do 3 kinds of coaching. One kind of coaching is a company pays me to coach a high-performing executive. Poly, the Gates Foundation, Tapestry Boeing have been some of our clients in that regard. There are also others. I have an express sort of coaching service where someone will pay me out of their pocket for a career transition coaching engagement. And I've just launched the Career Transition Blueprint, which is a suite of solutions, including 10 online modules to help people who are in a job transition to secure a job in one of the coveted opportunities that are out there. If you're a 26-year-old, this is not for you. These are for people that are mid-career or executive leaders where you're interviewing for a 6 or 7-figure job. These are not the kind of jobs that are going to be on LinkedIn. These are the kinds of roles that come through activating your network, surviving a competency-based interview, doing a case study presentation, which is typically what happens at mid-career and senior level roles, and then mastering your references and really getting off to a fast start. So I've reverse engineered the process from an executive recruiter's perspective to give people the cheat code to what actually works in a mid-career or executive job search. It includes the modules, some Q&A sessions with me, a newsletter, access to my podcast archive, and also access to a LinkedIn networking community.
Oh my gosh. So many great resources, a wealth of knowledge I wish I had when I was in the job market, because I think it would have saved my sanity in a lot of ways and equipped me with how to deal with some of these things that, for us as you start to ascend in certain leadership positions are very foreign. And so you're figuring out, everything. You're drinking out of a fire hose, just trying to, make your way. And so, especially with the current state of affairs in the job market in the United States for Black professionals, which we'll get to in a second, I think for all of those that are watching, and I dropped the link to your Protégé Leadership Academy website, please visit the site, check it out, see if this is right for you, and then hopefully in the span of this conversation, you'll get some nuggets that will help you along the way.
Thank you.
For Rory, for you, what has changed, or what's been the biggest change or changes in the past 12 months in the job market for Black professionals?
So a couple things. Number one, despite what you hear in the media, there is a recession. I'm not an economist. I'm not a Treasury Department official, but what prevents the data from suggesting that there is an overall recession is that there are spikes in the economy that are over-indexing on hiring, but they don't offset the lack of hiring in others. So if you're working in healthcare or if you're in AI, it is 2012 all over again. It is 2015. It is people are hiring like gangbusters. If you're in the communications sector, like if you work at a communications agency, because there is so much disruption in the market and the economy and in politics, companies don't know how to position and deal with the new regime and what's happening. And so those pockets are incredibly active. If you're in consumer, technology, retail, media, those sectors are not doing so well. And you're starting to see layoffs by some of these big companies, and hiring is flat. So that's impacting everybody. What's particular about people of color and Black people, I think, which is unfortunate, and I mentioned this today to someone, they said, what's impacting you more? The fact that companies are rolling back DEI or the economy? I said, it's actually another factor. I said, part of the growth, the outgrowth of the rollback on DEI is that there's a reluctance in general to hire Black people because there's a sense that, are you a DEI hire? What is that person really the most qualified? It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's unfounded. There's no factual or statistical basis for it. If you are an African-American executive and you run through the gauntlet of an executive search, there's no doubt you're qualified. There have been so many checks and balances in that process. You are not sneaking through any process. Even if you got a Black search firm like ours, you know, there's no a Black client there. I've been doing search for 20 years. I've never had a client tell me, well, you know, that Black candidate, that woman candidate, they kind of fell through the cracks. It's a gauntlet. It's a 3-month process. It's 3 rounds of interviews. You're going to interview with 12 to 20 people. You're going to get assessed, competency-based interviews. There is no cheat code for that. You have to win it. There are some things you can do, but there's no way to sort of, you know, flip a switch and you become the magic Black candidate that wins. So what's happening right now is that's being turned on its head, and people are still saying and nervous about what happens if I, as a Black manager or a white manager or a Hispanic manager, hire this Black person. That's not everywhere in the market, but it's in parts of the market. It's in parts of the market. And I generally believe that the economy mirrors the body politic, essentially, that you've got a third of the companies and organizations in the market that are like, great, we don't have to do this anymore. I didn't want to do it anyway. Okay. That's your sort of conservative crowd. Yeah. You've got a third of the market that's like, we're doubling down on this. We may rename it. We may reframe it. We may create a new narrative around it, but we're still going to do this. It's still all systems go. And then you've got the great middle, the independents, as you were in this market, that are sort of trying to figure it out. They are nervous about lawsuits. They're nervous about compliance issues. Their general counsel is in their ear. The head of HR has been pushed back. The head of DI has been downgraded to a director level role. And they are scrambling to figure out what's going on. So I think if you're an African-American executive, it is a tough time, just real talk. I think if you're an African-American vendor, it is a tough time because people are living in fear. They're living in, this is not the same as if, I think, you know, there's always sort of an ebb and flow on the progressive nature of this kind of opportunity. If certain parties get in, it's more, certain parties get in, it's less. I think this is categorically different. And I think companies and organizations are trying to find their footing, and a lot of them haven't found their footing yet. And until that changes, that plus the overall recessionary economy, it's a tough time.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear, you know, from what I'm hearing on both sides. There's a lot of fear and disillusionment because, you know, the mandate that came down from the 47th administration was directed for the federal workers, but somehow it breached the divide and permeated into the private sector. And so you saw these companies like Target and, you know, starting to say, oh, no, we're going to back away, which they've now gotten some lessons. But I think that was the part that was kind of, it shook everybody because it was like, okay, well, you have dominion over the government, not saying it's right, but that's your dominion. Why are now private companies deciding, hey, I am now going to, like you said, downgrade certain roles, change my investment, especially these same companies, many of whom put up Black tiles in faux allyship during 2020, that we as Black and brown people are looking to them and saying, okay, we only half believed y'all when you did that performative allyship with, you know, no real attachments, right? You made a lot of commitments, but no attachments to metrics, executive compensation, sharing those metrics and annual reports with shareholders, anything, right? It was just this veil of secrecy. And so now we're confronted, fast forward to 2025, and, these companies are now like, like whatever he says, right, they're following, but they also have real life consequences. So
Yep.
for the people that you're working with or people that are watching that have a lot of fear and anxiety, either they've been impacted or potentially impacted, what is it that you're seeing in terms of like the common fear? We talked about the companies, but from the people who are looking for jobs right now.
Yep. Let me just say as a footnote, one of the things that's impacting the private sector is that a surprising number of companies are actually federal contractors. So I have heard of companies that I was trying to figure out, how are you a federal contractor? I mean, this could be a hospitality company and they're a federal contractor, and in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so they are like, we're going to roll back DEI because we could lose our federal contract. And so there are a surprising number. It's not just defense companies or IT companies. There are all there are thousands of companies that get federal contracts. And so that is the power that's being wielded is, are you going to lose $500 million on DEI? Probably not. You're probably not going to do that because you only committed 10 million and you didn't follow up on that. So you're not going to do that. The other part of the fear, and I'm in recruiting, so I'm talking to candidates every day. I'm trying to talk candidates who are passively interested into taking a job at one of our clients. And no one wants to be the last one hired in this economy because they don't know. And this is, I mean, look, our candidates are everybody. It's white, black, gay, straight, Hispanic, women, men. Everybody is concerned about that. But if I talk to a black candidate who's a superbly qualified executive for a role, they're like, I know what this company thinks of me that I work at. How do I go to this new company as the new person with their DEI strategy, perhaps shape-shifting with the wind? And I'm caught up in that. I don't want to be caught up in that. I'll stay here. And you can't offer them. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, we're still placing people of all backgrounds in these roles, but it is harder to recruit everyone right now because talent in the market is like money. Like when the market stops, what it means is that money stops flowing.
Yeah.
Right? You're not spending, I'm not spending, businesses aren't investing, consumers aren't spending, people aren't buying real estate, right? Talent stays put too. Talent doesn't move either. So that when that talent market gets illiquid, we say in recruiting, the money market gets illiquid, like the financial markets. Like we think in recruiting is a preview of the overall economy. Yeah. And when people stop moving in jobs at the executive level in particular, it means companies aren't funding that managing director of that new business unit. They're not going to hire a new CFO. As a client told us when one of our placements left, a Hispanic woman left, took a job as a head of HR at a new company. I called my client. I said, I'm so sorry she left. I thought she'd last. She said, that woman was one of the most spectacular hires I've ever made in my career. What a great job you did. I knew I couldn't keep her. I said, great. Let me show you I can recruit somebody else equally as great. And she said, I'm not paying you 6 figures to find somebody that costs $800,000. So my boss can look at me like I'm side-eyed, that I'm spending $1 million in this economy. And I was like, and that's a superstar. It's like, I'm going to take her role and divide it up to 3 people. So there is just, everything is sort of frozen.
Yeah, because you see, like, and that's the thing that I want people to understand is, and I've said this many a times, is like, you're a cog in the wheel, like you're a widget when you're in the United States, right? There's this, you don't have job security because you are an at-will employee. There's hyper capitalism. There's the fact that your health insurance is tied to your employment. And what I don't hear, and I'm not saying just from you, I'm saying like in the whole marketplace. And I used to do some work for my former employer around, leadership development, psychological safety, and things like that. And what always struck me was they're making these big, massive decisions, right? And not considering the psychological instability that they are inflicting upon their workforce,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's like, if I were still employed, a Black woman who my company said this 5 years ago, right? And now I'm filled with angst, anxiety about what's my place. Is the axe going to swing my way?
Mm-hmm.
Am I able to duck? Am I going to get it in the head? Like, what is going on? Right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's the reality of what people are dealing with. And none of these companies are taking ownership of that and thinking about psychological safety as it relates to the leadership, compounded with, to build upon a point you mentioned earlier, I think it's difficult for, and it's not a defense, but just the reality of what's going on. These companies, when you're compounding, conflicting, wherever the wind blows,
Mm-hmm.
tariffs, no tariffs, this, that, things that impact your bottom line. So you cannot forecast, you
Mm-mm.
know, next year because you made your forecasts in the previous year,
Mm-hmm.
right, under a different administration, but you thought, oh, my incoming guy is going to be this, this, this. Now it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like there's no firm territory to land your feet. And so how do you then make advancements and make investments
Mm-hmm.
in, long-term investments, or add, to your point, executive leaders, because things are shifting. The dollar is shifting, right? We're seeing that as people who are living in Europe, right? The dollar is weaker against the euro. We're seeing the impact of tariffs today, not tomorrow, the day after, yay. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
all of these, a confluence of things. And it's a struggle, just as me as now a layperson to figure out. And so for people who are in our Blacks at Global Passport community, we have our accountability group coming up next Saturday. I hear from our members who are federal workers, who are working in the private sector, who are nervous about, what their plans are, if they're going to have a job. They're trying to put their ducks in a row for their move, but now the ground is literally shifting underneath their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a scary time. So, what are the smart, maybe 2 or 3 smart moves that Black professionals can make to be competitive and pivot in this market?
So that's a great question. And I'm from New Orleans. And if you live in the Gulf South and you don't have a ready to go bag, you're crazy because a
Mm,
hurricane can come at any point. So
yeah.
you have to have a ready to go career from now through the rest of your career until you retire. You have to have the suitcase, as it were, which allows you to get ready. What's in that suitcase? Number one is a habit you have to form of activating your network and keeping it active. What most people do, what I did at one point in my career, is you get in your job, you're enjoying your life, you're doing all the responsibilities of that life. You are not keeping up with mentors, sponsors, co-workers, sorority sisters, fraternity brothers, roommates, neighbors. You're not. You're putting up good work. You're on LinkedIn maybe twice a month, if that, and that's your friend's birthday or your roommate's, promotion, but you're not really activating your network, and you certainly
Mm,
aren't building your network. You may go to a couple of conferences, you're on a panel, but you don't have a habit of activating and building your network, and you have to do it. And I am
mm,
a huge believer that once you get to 35, your career is based on what you know. When you get to 45, it's based on who you know. And after 45, it's based on who knows you.
Yes.
And so if you don't have a habit and a system of collecting people, I use that word and phrase deliberately, collecting people and activating them, you got to do that. Number two is you have to be able to tell your story when the lights come on an interview and you are asked to do that. And a lot of people, particularly people working in the federal government, they are specialists.
Yeah.
They have been putting their head down and doing work for 2, 5, 10, 15 years. They haven't interviewed in a while. They don't know how their skills translate, how they translate to the private sector or to even the civil sector outside of the federal government, even the state government or nonprofits or trade associations. They don't know the rhythm of an interview and a job search process.
Yeah.
So they are the people that call you every 5 minutes and ask, hey, how's it going with the search? Well, I interviewed you last week. Search will take, another 90 days, 45 days, and I'll get back to you. Like, they're just out of rhythm. It's like, my wife and I have been married 20 years. We dated 5 years before that. If I were single, I don't know what to do. What am I wearing? Jordache jeans and bring you some dinosaur candy? I don't know what are you doing in these streets these days?
Not the Jordache, Rory. Not the Jordache.
Okay, look, I'm a double nickel this summer. I don't know what to do. Okay. So you have to sort of get in game speed, and a big part of that is your interview. So activating your network, interview prep, right? So be able to tell your transitions through your jobs, be able to translate what you do and how that matches with this new company and their job specification. Be able to talk about skills and certifications and upskilling you've done throughout your career. And I think the third thing that is hugely important is, and this is almost a philosophical construct, is you have to consider your career as a display of your qualifications and skill sets, and be slightly agnostic about where you deploy those skills. What I mean by that, is that a lot of people that work in consistent organizations, a nonprofit, a university, even a company where they've been there, coordinator, senior coordinator, manager, senior manager, director, senior director, they think the next job in their career is going from A to B. B is the same job, higher level, higher title, similar cultural organization. You have to consider your career as going from A to X. And X is inclusive of the natural next step. If you are a GS 11, GS 12 in some other agency, right? Or going to state government. It's also being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner, being a freelancer, putting together what I call a portfolio career, where you're doing some consulting, some investing, some advisory work on a board or a nonprofit or a corporate, where there is some compensation associated with that, where you don't really have a traditional W-2 that gives you everything you need in your career. You're doing it through 2 clients, an advisory role position, and an investment in a company that's paying you dividends. I mean, we're living in an era right now where there are so many permutations of careers that we often have a lag in how we think about our careers, and we think about it a decade ago. And right now, I mean, everybody should consider entrepreneurship as a possibility at every juncture of their career. And it does. I'm not talking about being the next Google, raising venture capital. I'm talking about privatizing your job as a consultant. Let me give you one example. When I first got into search, the first time the light bulb went off about the gulf in knowledge and nuance between white and black folks in their careers at the executive level happened when I was like 35. I've been in search 20 years this year.
Wow.
This was like in 2008. So the market has collapsed. Investment banking industry has imploded. I'm interviewing somebody from I'm interviewing for a role where the candidate pool is investment bankers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I interview a white candidate. White candidate says this. I ask him, tell me why you left, I'm making it up, Goldman Sachs, just, for your next job. And he says, well, I was a managing director at Goldman Sachs, and I decided I wanted to start my own entrepreneurial firm. I felt like I had enough to really put a flag in the ground. So I started Acme Investments, and it's been going great. But right now, I'm really looking for a global platform. Most of our clients are domestic, and I want a global platform to really get moving again. Oh, okay. It's interesting. All right. Interview a black candidate. Works at Lazard. So tell me what happened with Lazard and why you're looking at this opportunity. Well, as you know, the 08 crisis happened. I got laid off. And I've been on the market for the last 12 months, really looking for a job. Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the fact pattern. They both got laid off. Somebody told, the white candidate knows, start your own consulting firm.
Yeah.
So that when you interview, you can talk about your clients, you can stay active, you can stay game ready, you can generate income. It keeps your motivation up, keeps you inspired about your job search. The black guy that interviewed, who's been on the market for 12 months, slumped shoulders, he's defeated, he's wondering if he's ever going to get a job again. He doesn't know to start Acme Co-Investments. And what does that do in the process? It makes the other candidate, wow, he's got entrepreneurial instincts, he started a new company. He's just a better candidate. That's a better set of factors. So I think you have to have your game ready suitcase. You have to have your suitcase ready and be ready to move at a moment's notice, which is not something that we grew up thinking about. There is no job security. Flat
yes, out. That's 100%, 1,000%.
There are companies I will not name. There are companies that are notorious. They're in the entertainment space where you can get fired because the company decides they want a different version of your skill set. I'm not going to name them, but we all use them. And I meet executives all the time. I'm like, well, I took a package from that company. They give you 2 or 3 years of severance. So you sit on the beach for a couple of years. You got, some of these white collar jobs, you're talking about, millions of dollars in severance, and they did nothing wrong. They did nothing wrong. So you have to have your suitcase ready. You got to activate your network. You got to be ready in game speed to interview. And then you got to consider the myriad of opportunities that could be available to you to think about going from A to X, not A to B.
It's so interesting as you were sharing that nugget, and that is so powerful. I was reflecting on my own experience in a couple things. One, I realized the first time I got laid off in 2008, 2009. So I spent like 10 years in state government, New York State legislature. And then I was a lobbyist for a couple of years. That was my first layoff. Last one in, first one out type of thing, 2008, 2009. And it was that one. And my husband at the time, we had both gotten laid off. And I started a blog. And my blog got picked up. I wound up doing like a whole press tour or whatever at the time. But it made for an interesting conversation during the interview. Because I showed up at the interview. I think I was on CNN. Yeah, I think I had breakfast at the mayor's house, went to CNN. So I showed up with TV makeup on, which is like 10 pounds of makeup. And so I'm like, ooh, right. In the daytime, you kind of look like a lady at a night. And so I was like going from that straight to an interview. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I explain like how like I'm made up? And I was like, oh, I just came from this interview and I was on, CNN, blah, blah. And they were like, oh my gosh, tell me more, right? Tell me about your blog. I get hired, right? Because I had a differentiator, right? So then I'm like, okay, fast forward, stay at the job for a number of years, was laid off after getting 40 under 40. And I said to myself, I don't want 100% of my income coming from a job because it's hella risky. It goes back to what we said at the beginning of our conversation, right? When you work in the United States, you are working at the pleasure of your employer. So I started doing digital marketing. I wanted to keep my skills sharp. I went back to school, got a certificate in digital marketing, which then, wildly enough, right? I get hired to run digital marketing for the Advil brand. And I'm like, for my little certificate. But again, it showed like my career, my bachelor's is in English, my master's is in social work, right? Like nothing that I had done, right, should have set me up. But it was the things that I did on my quote unquote downtime while raising my two children on my own and things like that, that I was like, okay, how do I pivot? How do I take what I'm interested in and look at how the marketplace dynamics are and position myself? Like I can't start as an entry level digital marketer, right? Like I need to leapfrog. And then it served me well again, my last stint, where I had started Blacks at Global, and the pandemic was going on, and I was like, well, I probably should get health insurance because it's America. so that job looked kind of good for that reason.
Right.
And I felt like, okay, I'm not at the tail end of my career. I kind of felt at that moment, but I felt like I had, gotten awards, all the things. Like I don't need to jump through any hoops anymore, right? So I was very transparent. I started this, podcast. It's been featured in New York Times and all this other stuff. They were like, "Oh my gosh, we want you to do a podcast for us."
Right.
That's what got me hired. I literally was the last person that they interviewed. And the day, I remember this now correctly, I hadn't thought about this in years. So the original date, I guess they had, and they called me and they're like, "Oh, did you know you had an interview at like 8:00 this morning?" I'm like, "No, because I would have remembered that." And they said, "Oh, we mistyped your name," right? They dropped an H. So it said, "Okay, our apologies. Can we reschedule for tomorrow?" Sure, right? Because I didn't know about today. So of course we can do tomorrow, right? And that's when I give my spiel. And they're like, so I'm like, "Oh, so when are you making your hiring decision?" They're like, "Oh, like today, because you're the last person we interviewed." I'm like, "What?" Next call, and it's funny because I remember they called me and the number came up, like hidden or whatever it was. And so I kept declining. And then finally I got an email like, "We've been trying to reach you to offer you this job."
Like block, you're about to block your blessing. Literally.
Yes, I was about to block my blessing, but it reinforces the strategy that you just shared. And I hadn't even thought about it in that way because I was like, well, all those times that, I never had a linear career, right? All those times I kind of made sense of the tailwinds, the headwinds, what was going on, realizing where there was headwinds, realizing where I could catch tailwinds, and just being a curious learner, right? I'm an introvert by nature, but being a curious learner and then being able to craft a story. And so for those of you who are watching, like sometimes we think that we need to keep all these talents and skills and things that we're good at hidden because it saves us, it keeps us safe. But instead, you can use this for your benefit, for your leverage, right? Create additional sources of revenue. Create something that's going to make you stand out if you decide to pursue traditional employment or do both. Yes.
I think that the three things you have to always be doing in your career is, to your point, constantly learning, constantly, and people think networking is a bad idea, a bad word. Like, I don't mean going to conferences and handing out, your business card and that kind of thing. Just activating and building your network. And then number three is be open. Just be in a frame of mind of being open. And the stats, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US says that you're going to reinvent yourself 7 times in your career. That's almost biblical. That's
I know I've done at least all 7.
And the first couple of times those reinventions happen, what do you think? You think, well, I had to hustle and be opportunistic in this moment, but I'm gonna get back on track. Like I'm still waiting for that law job I'm gonna love, but that was 1995 last time I practiced law. I'm still waiting for that incredible policy job that's gonna work out. That was 1999, 2000. So you're going to have these, when you get to, I think, the later stage of your career, I have this whole model about you got 4 decades in your career, the way you have 4 years of college. And you and I are kind of, I think you're around the same age.
Yes.
We're ending our junior decade, which is largely your achievement decade. And so you don't reinvent yourself in college like that, but in your career, you're going to have these reinventions, these major pivots. They're always disruptive until you get through 2 or 3 of them, and then you understand that's normal. This is just one of those moments. It's time for a pivot. It's going to be embracing the new and bringing some of the old with me, but sloughing off the stuff that doesn't work. And new vocabulary, new industry, new language, new geography, perhaps. And once you get through it, I think the 3rd time, you then get the sort of competency of managing through ambiguity, and you get better at it, and you optimize it, and it works out to your advantage, I think.
Absolutely. Want to give a shout out to my 7th grade teachers in the chat. Hey, Miss Hazel.
Wow.
How you doing? I want to get to, there's a couple questions in the chat, and then I had a couple questions for you. Some of them are comments as well as questions. So VJ said, being qualified, vetted, and still having to overcome the DEI label. Yeah, that is the sad state of affairs for sure. Greta asked, are you seeing DEI on a state level, like differing, I guess, versus in red states versus blue states?
Yes, absolutely. I would say during the height of Black Lives Matter, we had companies reaching out to us across the country. Now, the red state companies were still sort of like, and I'm an OG. I've been doing this work for 30 years. And you would see them like, I think I should do this. I've been told I should be doing this. And I would tell our team, I'm like, I'm from New Orleans. I'm like, we are Creole gumbo. If you don't like spicy food, you should not come to our restaurant, because that is part of what the food is like. It's all spicy. The etouffee is spicy. The gumbo is spicy. It's all spicy. So what we're seeing now is Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, cities like that are still going full strong, looking for the best candidate. You can call it what you want, but it's looking for the best candidate. Because let me tell you what happens in the big search firms. Let me just break it down for you, because I was inside. There's nothing protecting the status quo more like large international search firms. So my next door neighbor at one of the firms used to run the chief information officer practice. That's all he did, was recruit chief information officers. And we had our offsite the last week, and I said, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. I said, how are you billing $3 million every year? Every year.
Wow.
I said, how are you doing that? He said, he calls his assistant. He says, hey, bring me the list. And she comes in with 3 pieces of paper stapled together. He said, these are the CIOs and deputy CIOs of the Fortune 500. All I'm doing is shuffling this list for my clients.
Whoa.
And I thought to myself, I felt stupid, because I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm trying to find bespoke candidate lists for every search. I'm doing Cory Booker's superintendent of school search when he's mayor of Newark. I'm doing the CEO of the Schaumburg search after the 30-year veteran leaves it. I'm doing Harvard's first ever chief diversity officer search. These are brand new candidates. They're not in our database. We don't know these people. I got to find them. I got to source them. I got to reference them before this guy is just going down a list and shuffling the list. And I'm the one struggling to make my numbers every year. because I'm
Wow.
trying to do it the sort of organic way, the bespoke way. I'm trying to actually find the best candidate, not the also ran candidates from previous searches. And so I think there is still a hunger for that because look, the executive search industry has been in existence for 50 years. Part of the reason why there isn't more meritocracy in hiring is because the industry itself is not meritocratic in its hiring.
Yeah, very true.
In my exit interview at one of these companies, my boss was like, "Why are you leaving?" I said, "Because you guys are Georgia State grads and I'm a Harvard grad and all the black people are Princeton and Yale grads. And we're working for the Georgia State grads. No diss to Georgia State, but you can't act like I need to genuflect to you in some deference of your intellectual prowess when this is actually the least academically rigorous place I've been in."
Wow. Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
couldn't understand like a black person seeing it that way. But so there's a whole lot of factors that go into this. But I would say if you're living in California, New York, Washington State, Illinois, places like that, there are still those companies, those governments, Maryland, they're still, looking for the best candidates, looking for innovative thinking, looking for people that bring them access to new markets and, keep hope alive in those places.
Wow. Whew. Greta also said there's age discrimination in hiring or being in the layoff process. I definitely understand that. That was one of the things before I turned 50 last year, and I retired at 49. But when I was entering my 40s, and I guess maybe that's just how my brain is hardwired, right? To think more strategic, is I realized like, oh, I needed to, pivot, and I pivoted into the role of digital marketing, which I mentioned earlier, but I also knew that that had a shelf life because I said, okay, it's digital marketing. I'm in my 40s. I'm getting more expensive as I get older, right? As a candidate, because as I ascend, right, 200,000, 300,000. Okay, now I'm more expensive. I have a big target, right? I'm a female, I'm Black, right? And I'm in a particular industry that, changes on a dime. 1 second is Snapchat, then it's something else, right? At some point, they're going to be like, wait, you got a 50-year-old lady running, your digital marketing. And I had to think like, okay, what do I do then? Right. What do I do next? So it's to reillustrate that, you have to be thinking in a very nimble fashion when you're in the United States, and particularly when you're in that mid-career range, because the older you get, your healthcare is more expensive, your cost of living increases usually, your your fringe benefits become more expensive to the company, right? You're looked at as an expense, less as an asset. So then you have to like bump up, what are those tangibles and intangibles that I can bring that kind of have people looking at that and not focusing on the expense part. That's a difficult thing.
There is that. There is also companies that over-index on innovation and under-index on wisdom. And so you got to be careful. I mean, I can make a very awkward analogy. I'm fighting not to make it, but if you are a 50-year-old man and you're single, you should be probably dating 50-year-old women. I'm just you should trade, you should match wisdom with wisdom. And so I think there is a lot of, I think age discrimination is the most pernicious and the most prominent of the isms in the workplace. There is a very famous scenario, this is publicly recorded information, where one of the big search firms got cited by the EEOC for putting in their database around anybody over 55, TFO. Krishan Wright, a no-go for AbbVie, TFO. Too effing old.
Oh, damn. Wow. Wow.
And they laid
No
off the
way.
assistant. She was a whistleblower. She went to the
Oh
EEOC,
my
and it was
gosh.
like a big scandal in the search industry. But
What?
I don't know that every search firm did it, but I don't know that every search firm doesn't do it. So, well, the big search firm.
Ew.
So there's that. The age discrimination. So when you are intersectional, when you are wise and over
Mhm,
55,
mhm,
and a woman, and a person of color,
mhm,
and gay, and
mhm,
differently abled, I mean,
mhm,
then it becomes difficult, and those transitions become difficult as well. So
mhm,
I think your job search has to be, it's what I call local. It's got to be local for you. Like, what are
mhm.
your options? Your options at 58 are not your same options when you're 38.
Yeah.
38, they're still hiring you as a high potential. They're still looking at you
Mhm,
possibly as a generalist that they can shapeshift into a specialist. At 58,
mhm.
you do something well, hopefully, really well. And you don't have unlimited options. You may have 3 or 4 options. That's it. And
Yeah.
so this is why I'm offering this blueprint, because the amount of discernment and care you have to give yourself in selecting the companies you work for, not getting the job, selecting the job you're going to take.
Yeah.
You don't have room for error at 50 the way you do at 30.
Mhm,
My boss is crazy. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go backpack around Europe and come back. Yeah, nobody cares. You're 30. They're
mhm.
hiring you on potential. When you're 52 and you say,
No.
to hell with you and I'm leaving,
Yeah.
and you do that 3 times in a row, it
Mhm.
can be tough to get your job at 54.
Yeah, and there's less grace that's extended. So I
Absolutely.
think one of the things, for everybody that's watching, or I guess a couple things, is one, have that emergency fund.
Mhm.
When I had those layoffs, the first one was shaky, right? As I said, my husband at the time and I both encountered it. The second time it happened, by that time we were divorced and I had was raising my children. I had a good $35,000 cushion because I had gotten burned in 2008. And I was like, oh no, right? Like, I can't afford, if I lose my job, to then what happens, right? I don't have another income. I don't have my income.
Mhm.
And then subsequently, every time, there were times where I had to deplete it, right? By the time I took that job that I wrote most of my career out, I had $50 to my name before I took that job. But that was because I had that emergency fund lasting me almost 2 years,
Mhm.
right? And I would also say, for some people, they struggle with the idea of, investing or, embracing financial independence. The reason why these things are so important is that you're not going to be able to save your way into retirement. You have
Mm.
to multiply it. You have to put it somewhere where my dollar, when I put an order in, they don't see Krishan Wright, Black, 50 years old, blah, blah. They see an order come in, right? So that
Right.
is a marketplace where you are not automatically discriminated against, right? That is one that biases towards those who are investing for the long term. And the reason why that's important is, again, ageism is real. You know, there's different abilities. You might get, ill, something that takes you out of the workforce. Someone in your family or loved one can take you out of the workforce because, they're having something that they have to contend with. You don't know. And so when you
Right.
have that cushion to fall back on, you may choose to, like I did, right? I looked at my bank accounts and I was like, well, hey, I got enough money to leave this joint. And I
Mhm.
didn't care what they were selling because I had enough to say that I had enough.
Mhm.
And so that's why that piece is so important.
It allows you to make better career decisions. This sounds
Mhm,
crazy, and I did a podcast episode on my YouTube channel about this, about the myths of your career development. And one of the myths is you should never take a pay cut. You know, my ancestors struggled, and I'm never going to go backward and pay cut. And there's all these tropes, and I'm like, I took
mhm.
a $400,000 pay cut.
Woo,
I
dang.
went from making $600,000 to making $200,000.
Mm,
And I didn't have to do that. It's not like I had to. I had other jobs that would have paid me what I was making or a little bit more with bonus. But I was at a fork in the road in my career. I was like, do I want to do executive recruiting and talent, or do I want to be a lobbyist? I don't know. And this place allowed me to do both. So what is the value of understanding that? Well, Protégé launched a year and a half after because I was like, it's talent and recruiting. This place is more public affairs. I should probably start my own thing. Went to my boss. I said, thank you very much for giving me this platform. I think I figured it out. I'm gonna do this. He doesn't want to do executive search. I started I made all that money back like that. I don't even think about that anymore. But that clarity was so valuable. The culture, the relationships I built. We only think of the currency of our jobs as title, money, and prestige. And let me tell you, those are the pagan gods of your career. Those are the pagan gods of your career. Those are false gods you're worshiping. Money does matter. I'm not going to sit here and sound like a freaking communist. Money does matter, and you should get your bag, and you should get paid a competitive salary throughout your career. But relationships, experience, credibility in your industry, a pivot to learn a new skill, and a place that will give you the grace and patience to have you develop and acquire and deploy those skills. How much is that worth over the long arc of your career? It's worth a lot. And so you got to just think carefully about what are the ingredients you need to make in your career gumbo. And let me tell you, it ain't corn and it ain't tomatoes.
I love the New Orleans references.
I'm sorry, I can't. I make a gumbo reference. I make a gumbo reference at least once a day.
All right. So Ty asked a question. We are largely represented in government, HR, admin, DoD, and government contracts because we weren't given equal opportunity in the private sector. How can we pivot to the private sector if they are rolling back DEI?
Okay. So again, not every company is rolling back DEI. Some companies are saying they're rolling back DEI, just like they were saying they were going to invest in communities of color, and they're not doing either. They're keeping it status quo. So there is still hiring happening at these companies. You have to find them. You have to be judicious. You got to network. But I would say use blue cities, blue states, use companies that are in the sort of public sphere that have public facing either regulators or a consumer base where they have to pay homage to diverse communities because that's who buys their products. And then thirdly, I would look at the industries that are hiring. And like I said, AI is hiring, healthcare is hiring, some professional services sectors are hiring. And I think you can expect in those cases a fair outcome. I mean, we did 2 partner searches for a major Black-owned AI consulting firm out of Africa. These were high 6-figure salaries, but they're for people that were in AI. We did a search last year for an SVP of commercial solutions for a big healthcare company. That job paid, $500,000 a year. So I mean, there are roles out there. The sports sector is hiring. I mean, those clubs, those leagues, they are still making money. They are still hiring. So I think you have to be able to explain how your skills and experiences pivot to the private sector, how they matter, how they translate to the private sector. And once you do that, I think you got to activate your network. And your network is start with your phone and then go to your LinkedIn contacts and then build out from there.
Great advice. And then a follow up. Do you think that affirmative action DEI was beneficial to Blacks to get their foot in the door, or do you know if the data shows otherwise?
Absolutely beneficial. And let me say this, listen to all of the narrative right now that's happening about DEI. I mean, this is as full on of a frontal assault as there's ever been on DEI. What are you not hearing as part of the narrative? You are not hearing we hired all these unqualified Black people. That's the problem. The problem is these unqualified Black people were hired. Nobody is saying that. Nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere. Not in the public sector, private sector, universities, nonprofits. No pillar of the argument is that these unqualified people came in because of DEI. It's just, we don't want this anymore. We think it's unfair. Well, why is it unfair?
Mm-hmm.
Did somebody unqualified take the place of somebody qualified? No, there's no evidence of that at all. It's just there was a tremendous amount of hiring of people of color over the last 5 years. A lot. I mean, that's not a myth. There was a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people didn't like that. It's not complicated. They didn't like it. It wasn't like performance of companies went down. There's no study on that. You can't ask ChatGPT, did diversity create a lack of performance as more Black and brown people were hired? No, there's no evidence of that. It's the opposite. McKinsey says it brings out more innovation, and those companies outperform companies that don't have diverse backgrounds in the leadership teams. So I think the overwhelming evidence shows that it's been beneficial to people of color. It's been beneficial to companies and organizations. The biggest single set of beneficiaries of DEI have been Caucasian women.
Yep.
The role of Chief Diversity Officer, here's an amazing stat. The role of Chief Diversity Officer in corporate America, 70% of those roles are occupied by white women.
Yep.
Not Black women, not Black men, not gay Hispanic men.
Nope.
White women, the actual role. So it's benefited a lot of different people in different ways. But I will say one thing that's underreported about all this stuff is not just the ranks of corporate America at the board level or C-suite level. It's the Rory Verretts of the world, the Krishan Wrights of the world, the Robert Smiths of the world, who cut their teeth in corporate, who were trained in corporate, and who left mid-career to become entrepreneurs. I will tell you, those experiences mattered greatly in my development as an entrepreneur. Yes. I mean, working at 2 big search firms, dealing with Fortune 10 companies, how to service those elite companies, the pressure of that professional service and how to deliver that. I mean, that was very helpful to me. I'm sure, Krishan, all of that helped you and how you're an entrepreneur. Robert Smith would not be a billionaire if he didn't go to Goldman Sachs and understand, he learned some cheat codes along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, I was at the NFL. The NFL's business model is to take the game of football and slice and dice that in multiple ways for people to buy it. Buy it through tickets, buy it through buying the jersey, buy it through NFL Sunday Ticket, buy it through DirecTV, but it's all the different way. And so in my own company, I'm like, how can I create my talent management and development acumen and slice and dice that into multiple ways? I learned how to do that in corporate. So that's one of the legacies of corporate America we're going to talk about is how many people opted out of a long-term career in corporate America that became amazing entrepreneurs.
Me. I'm just saying, you're right. Like all of those skills, there's nothing that's wasted. Everything that you have learned and experienced, it builds on, it compounds. And so you can take those experiences and use it to your benefit. And that's why I think that, these conversations, especially right now, are very timely. So thank you for that, Ty. I want to kind of put our conversation and kind of wrap it a little bit into a bow. So many of the people that watch Black Sit Global, this YouTube channel or listen to the podcast, which again, Rory's story is this week's feature, are looking and actively working and planning towards their move abroad. And in that, they are thinking about their careers. So how do or should a Black professional think about career portability as it relates to being more global?
That's a great question. I know you are helping people get situated as part of their Blacksid and the advisory work you do. The career part is a big part of that, I think. And again, I think you have to start with a mentality that you have to be institutionally agnostic. That is so difficult to do because when we think of what we want to be in our career, like if you ask the average person, what do you want to be? They will tell you a title and a position at an established company. They're not going to say, well, I think I'll start my own company. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'll be an entrepreneur at 50. No, they're going to say, I want to be general counsel of AbbVie. I want to be managing director at Goldman Sachs. They think of a place and a title because the Western economy will suck the imagination out of you. And so you have to think about your career being outcome agnostic, but focus more importantly on what do you do with the skills that you have? What is the best platform to deploy those skills and qualifications? And that is not always somebody's employer. Sometimes it is your own company. Sometimes it is you and somebody else going in together. I had a coaching client who said to me at the end of the coaching engagement, I don't want to talk about this in the coaching engagement, can we partner together on doing L&D work and offer a solution to a client? And so we have a proposal to a Major League Baseball team to do this big training project. And she proposed that, okay? So you have to be agnostic about the outcome. You got to be a continuous learner. And I think the next 5 years, in particular with AI, one of the most profound and yet kind of scary thoughts I've read about in recent weeks is the advent of the 2-person or 1-person billion-dollar company.
Wow.
That AI is going to advance so much that you will be able to create $1 billion in value with one person running the company. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you got to do that as and I often tell Black professionals, do not think of yourself as an entrepreneur that you need to be Google. You got venture capital or business. There is no business plan for Protégé Search. I never wrote a business plan. There's no business plan. It was self-funded. I didn't go into debt. I made money immediately. Like, what if we could replicate that 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times, where people are making, generational wealth through through a consulting firm. There's no product here, right? Through their consulting firm. So I would encourage people to be agnostic about the outcome, to constantly refine your skills, to understand the different operating models that exist in the workforce, that your career does not have to be A to B. It can be A to X. You can put together and channel 2 or 3 mini careers together, right? I'm an advisor to a venture capital firm. I was a corporate board director. I'm a consultant. I publicly speak. Now I have digital courses. That's 5 or 6 revenue streams that happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the way you got to think about it. And I'm not doing Google. I don't have investors. And so I think people just have to be creative and imaginative in this moment with all these tools that are available to you to think about it, because you could wind up like a Krishan Wright, living in Lisbon, living her best life. I remember you were thinking about, I remember I was like, where's she gonna move? She gonna move to Lisbon. She gonna move to Lisbon. She's thinking she's gonna draw it out, but she gonna move to Lisbon. But you had your pick of any place in the world, and you decided I could do it here. I could build a network here. There's community. There's revenue opportunity, whatever. And so I think, look, in every chaos, in every moment of disruption, there is tremendous opportunity. In this moment of disruption in the United States, there is opportunity for you to consider not only career options, but global destinations for you to live.
Yes.
And I hope many of us take advantage of that. Because I don't know a single person in my network who's an expat who's like, yeah, man, I'm trying to get back to the US.
No.
Maybe my network is small. I don't know.
Never.
I'm in the wine club, but people aren't saying that. So I hope that's additive. And I would just say, give yourself the time to figure this out. This is not superficial move. I mean, I'm not making light of it. Moving abroad is a serious endeavor, but it is doable. A lot of us do it. A lot of us don't have 7 figures in the bank. Some of us got 3 figures in the bank. I know people that got 3 figures in the bank, and they made the move, but they were like,
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna have 4 figures soon, and then I'm gonna get to 5 figures, and they've done that. But you provide such great resources and a network of people that can share in those resources. So I think it's imagination and understanding what possibilities are out there. If you can tap into that, you'll likely find your way to something you never imagined doing.
Yes, that's so true. So, Rory, as we start to wrap up our conversation, and I'm infinitely grateful for you sharing your wisdom tonight. I know people have been inspired, they're ready to take action. Please tell the people how they can find you, how they can support what you're doing, talk about your YouTube channel and Protégé Leadership Academy.
Thank you. At protégeleadershipacademy.com is all you need to know about the career transition blueprint. And again, that's 10 digital modules, about 3 hours of content. It includes a private LinkedIn networking group. It includes Q&A sessions with me. We had our first session tonight. The blueprint launched on April 7th. So we had our first bi-weekly session tonight. It was 90 minutes. I answered a lot of questions about a lot of different career topics for people in the blueprint community. It includes, I once had a podcast many years ago I started called Protégé, where I interviewed Valerie Jarrett, Duvall, Patrick, and other luminaries and people that are less well known that are doing wonderful things. I have those podcasts archived. They're taken off the web. That's available to you. We also have a monthly newsletter that's going to have some really incredible career advice. And it's really about building this community that can not only help you through your job search, but help you throughout your career. Because as I beat this dead horse, activating your network is the protein shake of your career exercise regimen. Okay. And my YouTube channel is the same name, Protégé Leadership Academy. I post twice a week, and it's career advice for mid-career professionals and executive leaders. And thank you about that. And YouTube channel is 2 months old. I'm having so much fun with it. And I'm also on Instagram, and my daughter laughs at me, TikTok.
Oh, all right now.
I have a series called Dear Protégé, and it's basically these 1-minute episodes of me talking to my protégés about career advice. I'm taking like the thousands of conversations I had and kind of bring them down to 1 minute. So protégeleadershipacademy.com is the website, and on all networks and social media channels, Protégé Leadership Academy. And please join our community. We're trying to help each other succeed. We are trying to democratize the career cheat codes.
Yes, yes. And you guys have gotten a bunch of cheat codes tonight. Definitely take advantage of the resources that Rory shared. Subscribe to his YouTube channel and also listen to his episode of the Black to Global podcast. Hear his backstory and how he wound up in Lisbon, Portugal. So, Rory, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And guys, thank you for tuning in and for all of your great questions. I will be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Till then, boa noite. Ciao, ciao.